February 1959, the Kolatsiako Mountain in the heart of the Ural Range. The temperature is 30 degrees below zero. A search party battling brutal winds discovers a scene that defies all logic. A large tent belonging to a group of 9 experienced hikers is abandoned. But it's not just empty. It has been sliced open from the inside. Nearby, the first bodies are found. 2 men, frozen solid. They are barefoot and dressed only in their underwear. 9 veteran hikers went missing. 9 bodies were recovered. But the state they were found in has created one of the 20th century's most terrifying and unsolved mysteries. This is the enigma of the Dyatlov Pass, and what really happened on that mountain defies explanation.
It was supposed to be a challenge, a badge of honor. The group, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, was composed almost entirely of students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They were not amateurs. They were highly experienced Grade 2 certified hikers, aiming to achieve Grade 3 certification on this expedition, the highest honor available. Their goal was to ski across the northern Urals and conquer Mount Otorten. They were young, ambitious, and in high spirits. We know this because their cameras were recovered. Photos show them laughing, setting up camp, and trekking through the vast white wilderness. On February 1st, they began their ascent of Kolatsiako, a mountain whose name, in the local Mansi language, translates ominously to Dead Mountain. A snowstorm moved in, with hurricane-force winds and zero visibility. They lost their direction, and in a critical error, found themselves on the mountain's exposed eastern slope. Exhausted, Igor Dyatlov made the call. They would make camp here, on the side of the mountain, and wait out the storm. It was the last decision any of them would ever make. Their last journal entry, written that day, was cheerful. There was no hint of danger, no sign of distress. They were due to send a telegram by February 12th. When no message came, their families grew anxious. By February 20th, a full-scale search and rescue operation was underway, involving civilian volunteers and the Soviet military. On February 26th, the searchers found the tent. The discovery was the first in a long line of terrifying questions. The tent was badly damaged, but it hadn't collapsed. It was, as one rescuer noted, ripped open from the inside. Why would 9 experienced hikers in sub-zero temperatures cut their way out of their only shelter? All of their belongings, their warm clothing, their boots, their food, their axes were left behind. A trail of footprints led away from the tent, downhill, towards a patch of woods nearly a mile away. The footprints were baffling. They were the prints of people who were barefoot or wearing only socks. Some were in a single file line, as if walking calmly. Others were scattered, suggesting panic. The searchers followed the tracks. Under a large cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were shirtless, shoeless, and clad only in their undergarments.
Their hands were torn and bloodied. The branches of the cedar tree above them were snapped, suggesting one of them had tried frantically to climb it, perhaps to get a better view or to escape something. Nearby, the remains of a small, hastily built fire were found. They had frozen to death, but the scene made no sense. Why leave the tent? Why abandon their clothes? Why run a mile in the snow only to die of cold? As the search continued, 3 more bodies were found between the cedar tree and the camp, including that of Igor Dyatlov. They were found in poses suggesting they were attempting a desperate final crawl back up the hill to their tent. They too were improperly dressed. They too had died of hypothermia. But the mystery was far from over. The search for the remaining 4 hikers dragged on for 2 more months. It wasn't until May 4th, as the winter snows finally began to melt, that the most disturbing discovery of all was made. The last 4 hikers were found in a deep ravine, buried under 15 feet of snow, just 75 meters from the cedar tree. And their injuries were not from the cold. Lyudmila Dubinina, Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignol, Alexander Zolotarev, Semyon Kolevatov. These 4 had died violently. Thibeaux-Brignol had suffered a catastrophic skull fracture. Kolevatov was found with major chest trauma. Zolotarev, a 38-year-old war veteran, had his chest completely crushed, with numerous ribs broken. And Lyudmila Dubinina had identical, massive chest trauma. She, along with Zolotarev, was also missing her eyes. The medical examiner was stunned. He wrote in his report that the force required to inflict these injuries was equivalent to a high-speed car crash. He stated definitively that the hikers could not have inflicted these wounds on themselves, nor could another human have done it without a weapon. And yet, in a detail that defies all logic, none of these bodies had any external wounds. There were no bruises, no cuts, no soft tissue damage. It was as if they had been crushed by an immense, invisible force. The final chilling detail was Lyudmila. She was also missing her tongue. The investigation was now not just a search and rescue mission. It was a criminal investigation. But the more they learned, the less sense it made. Some of the hikers' clothing was found to be radioactive. Not dangerously high, but significant levels of radiation were detected on several garments. What happened on that mountain? What single event could explain all of these bizarre, contradictory facts? The theories began immediately. The first, and for a long time the official Soviet explanation, was an avalanche. The theory goes, a slab of snow crashed onto the tent, causing the hikers to panic, cut their way out, and flee. The crushing injuries would be explained by the snow. But this theory is full of holes. The tent was on a slope, but it wasn't steep enough for a major avalanche. The tent itself was not buried or crushed. It was standing when the searchers found it. The footprints leading away from the tent were not panicked in all cases, and an avalanche does not explain the missing tongue, the missing eyes, or the radiation. The case was abruptly closed in May 1959. The official ruling
was that the hikers had died as a result of an overwhelming natural force. The files were sealed and classified. Kholat Syakh and the surrounding area were closed to the public for 3 years. This secrecy, combined with the bizarre evidence, gave rise to a much darker theory, a secret Soviet weapons test. This theory points to the radiation. It points to the eyewitness accounts from another hiking group miles away who reported seeing strange orange spheres or fiery orbs in the sky in the direction of the mountain on the night of the incident. Could these hikers have wandered into the test site of a concussion bomb or a new terrifying radiological weapon? A percussive blast could explain the internal, crushing injuries without external wounds. It could explain the panic, and it would explain the government cover-up. But it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain why they ran a mile. It doesn't explain the missing tongue. And then there are the scientific theories. One of the most compelling is the infrasound hypothesis. Certain wind patterns funneled by terrain can create a low-frequency sound, an infrasound, that is below the range of human hearing. But this sound is known to have powerful physiological effects. It can induce feelings of intense irrational panic, dread, and even physical discomfort. Could a Kármán vortex street, a specific wind phenomenon, have battered the tent with this maddening sound, driving the hikers into a state of temporary insanity? It would explain why they cut their way out and fled, disoriented and terrified, into the storm. This, combined with hypothermia, could trigger a known phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. As a person freezes to death, their body's final act is to send a rush of warm blood to the skin, making them feel intensely hot. In their delirium, they tear off their clothes, hastening their own death. This combination of infrasound and paradoxical undressing explains the cut tent, the lack of clothing, and the panicked flight. But it still doesn't explain the car crash injuries. It doesn't explain the missing tongue, and it doesn't explain the radiation. Decades have passed. The files were briefly unclassified in the 1990s, but they revealed little. Many pages were missing. Key evidence was lost. In 2019, the Russian government reopened the case, only to close it again, blaming a small-scale slab avalanche that forced the hikers to flee, who then got lost in the dark and froze. This explanation ignores almost all of the disturbing evidence. The Dyatlov Pass incident is not a mystery with a missing piece. It is a puzzle where none of the pieces fit. Every rational theory, avalanche, military test, infrasound, even an attack by the local Mansi people, which was quickly ruled out, only explains one or two parts of the puzzle, while being completely contradicted by another. We are left with a tent sliced open from the inside. We are left with 9 bodies scattered and strangely injured. We are left with radioactive clothing, missing eyes, and the silence of a government. Something terrible happened on Dead Mountain in 1959. A force that could crush human bone without leaving a bruise. A terror that could send 9 veterans fleeing barefoot into a blizzard. The secret of what really happened lies buried with them under the frozen, silent snows of the Dyatlov Pass.